Welcome to this episode of Risk Engineers Talk Governance. In this episode, due diligence engineers Richard Robinson and Gaye actually talk about their work in due diligence engineering and how they're change agents for safety culture. We hope you enjoy the episode. Please give us some feedback, and if you have any topics you'd like us to talk about, please drop us a line. Also, make sure that you subscribe on your favourite podcast platform and that you give us a rating. Enjoy the episode.
Hi Richard, welcome back for another podcast episode.
Good to be here, Gaye. Always entertaining.
Always entertaining. Always have a bit of a laugh. Today we're going to talk about safety culture change agents, and I guess just a little bit of a introduction for our listeners is Richard recently gave a presentation at an AMPI conference, which is the Australasian Marine Pilots Institute conference in Perth. And we've had a good relationship with AMPI for a number of years now, probably over 15, coming up 20 years. And after Richard's presentation, he said, I feel like a broken record. I've said the same thing over and over for a number of years. You know, are we actually still adding value? And he asked this question, as only Richard can, to a number of people that he met at the AMPI conference. And one of the interesting feedbacks and he shared it with me when he came back, was that they saw R2A as change agents. So they were trying to get a change in safety culture within their either organisation or profession in the industry. And the way that Richard explains it and R2A explains it gave them that way to be able to do it. So it was really interesting because I said to him, well, are they all new people that haven't heard you speak before, so it's still interesting? Or are they, still on the journey? And the feedback was that partly there are new people coming into the maritime industry.
Well, particularly the overseas ones, because the overseas contingent, we had Finnish, Norwegian, French, English, the marine pilotage, American, Canadian, the actual pilotage around the planet was all there. And the thing they kept saying, all the innovation, all the change is coming from Australia. We want to be here. And then I think I told you, I showed you that picture of all the new president's female and the president of AMPI's female and all the female marine pilots. There was a cluster. I think we put the picture in our recent blog or something, I think it was. But anyway, it was really quite impressive. I mean, that was really the best session. I was hanging around listening to that one thinking these are remarkable people. They really were.
So that was sort of, yes, there were a whole lot of new people there. And the other feedback that there was is that not only are there new people coming into the maritime industry, but it's really easy to slip back to the old way of doing hazard-based risk assessment. And so somebody basically said, no, we need to keep you around to keep reminding us that there's a better way to do it and safety culture requires.
Well, this is partly because the IMO process has got the quantified risk assessment using target levels of risk and safety in other industries known as ALUP, sitting around causing endless grief. I remember that paper we did the safety case for Sydney ports with the Captain Philip Holliday, who was the previous harbour master of Southampton. And the IMO process using target levels of risk and safety just killed him. That's one of the reasons I think he was in Australia. And when we did our process with him, I mean, it was just a breeze. He was just so pleased. That's why he let us publish with him. And
I think we talked about it before that it's really it's not about the level of risk. It's are all reasonable practical precautions in place. And that's why the SOFAP approach works so well for these high consequence, low likelihood events. So we sort of came back and said, all right, so we are adding value to these sort of industries and they're the change agents. And as consultants, we can come in, and I guess some of the work that we've done more recently with a local council in particular, they wanted to change the way that they were doing their safety assessments within their organisation.
And presenting the safety, they'd wound up in the situation, as Sydney Decker makes the point, is that airline pilot turns professor of psychology at Queensland University. He just points out there's so many rules out there these days that nobody, not even the people doing their job, knows what all the damn rules are, which is really kind of weird. And he's absolutely correct. And the paperwork, and again, this council was complaining about it, the paperwork they were getting, the people who were doing the job, third parties were writing it for these people to do it. They didn't understand Well, I don't think the people writing it necessarily properly understood what they were writing, and certainly the people receiving it wasn't in a position to implement it or effectively or usefully. There's just paperwork everywhere.
So it was sort of becoming almost a liability management tool, wasn't it? A butt covering exercise that we have all of these processes and procedures and policies in place, but is it actually making it safer for the people on the ground doing the job? And even a comment in one of our recent engineering education courses was that we feel like as people that are putting these things together, we've got to tell the people that are doing the job about every single little thing, and at best they're getting skimmed over. At worst, they're not even being looked at all. And so are we setting these...
You're the big bad ones, the rare ones, the big bad rare ones.
So are we actually setting these people up, almost for a fall? We're covering our own, the people that are writing these things are covering their butts, but they're not necessarily making it safe for the people that are doing the job.
Yeah, and we've done this a number of times. We've sort of looked at people's risk registers for a particular issue or hazard, and the one that can kill and maim them is right down the bottom because it's considered to be so unlikely it's not worth thinking about. Whereas in fact, that's the one you've really got to make sure you've got right.
So we've said this on a number of occasions before, your risk register should really have tens of items in it, not hundreds of items. If you've got a hundreds of items risk register, you've missed the plot.
And you want to rank it by consequence in the first instance. Now, the point about this is because if you're looking at what R2A does, we just sort of recognise we were change agents in the sense that people get us in to actually change the system and have a different thing. And once we've done our bit, we leave. And we tend to only come back if somebody feels things are slipping away again and they need to bring it back. I think somebody described us once as hit and run consultants, if I recall correctly, because we turned up, did our thing, and we didn't try to just keep doing it on their behalf. Because, again, the whole point of the WHS legislation, for example, it's a governance document. That's what we've always been told. And the whole point of this business, risk management is a line management function. Anybody who thinks differently is kidding themselves. And the whole point of the legislation was to put the responsibility to the highest level of decision makers, the people who have control ultimately, and everybody else who doesn't have that control. To the extent that you have control, you've got to do what's reasonably practicable. That's a governance framework. And so we sort of find the situation where you've got third parties actually doing it for people. They can be advisors, but they can't take responsibility. And somewhere in there, something hasn't been getting, those two things have been somehow getting detached.
So what you really have to do is we go in and facilitate that change, I guess, for them, and then hand over the results that it's theirs to run with how they see fit and implement.
Now, this actually is one of these things because, just from my point of view and my experience working with Gaye, if she gets bored, life gets really bad. So she doesn't like keep doing the same thing all the time. Now, but that's actually the reason why APTO exists. And I don't know if we've just spoken about this before, but Gaye and a number of other women in engineering basically a while back basically decided they were a bit sick of going to a construction site or a work site and having to get in male PPE in order to do an inspection. I've got some pictures of Gaye in male PPE, which I've sent to her husband.
Not really flattering images, but that's all right. We were married by that time.
Well, yes, right.
And you're right. That was one of the reasons that we started APTO PPE. I was part of Women in Engineering, and they came and we did it from a safety perspective. Is it really safe for females to wear ill-fitting PPE on site? And so APTO was sort of born from that, and we did it from first principles. We designed them for a woman's figure and that they were safe on site. So yes, that's sort of our...
Well, I didn't get much choice in this because these women were down the back doing their thing. But what I have observed in all this, if you're a bloke who works with women, it's better having the women cheerful than not. And I recommend it, that they wear clothes that they feel pretty good in.
And that fit properly. So, always happy to talk about APTO but that's probably an introduction to another podcast at a later date. But just going with this change agent, we really have seen a change in safety culture and the way that it has to be dealt with.
Well, I suppose the other thing is I didn't want to drag Gaye off to a place she doesn't necessarily want to talk about, but I've mentioned in the past we have David Howarth out here from the Professor of Public Policy. R2A sponsored him together with the Victorian Bar. And he had the book out, Law as Engineering. But the point he was making, which is the point I always made, It's about change. Engineering is about change, and that's what he's talking about. Engineering law is engineering. He's talking about its design exercise to change things, and engineering is about change, and that's what we do. And you know, the business that engineering just does the same thing again and again and again. And it's all about standards, standards, and standards. We spend our life overturning standards. You know, people keep saying we're designed to the standards. No, you don't. You design for what you need to do, and then you check against the standard to make sure you haven't missed anything. And anybody who thinks to the contrary is kidding themselves. Engineering philosophy is it's all about the process. That's basically the Kantian position. The meaning's in the method. Results are only consequences. And that's why I suppose we've always had this, you know, we're not going to keep doing the same thing, Gaye. We can't bear it.
We both annoy each other, I think, Richard. But that seems to be exactly what you said. You're supposed to design to first principles first, design for what you want to achieve, and then you check against the standard. But we've had a number of discussions with some technological organisations that are building infrastructure and rolling stock at the moment that, no, we just design to the standard. And
well, there's a bit of some of the chief engineers are refuting that profoundly and saying, no, you design for what we need and then you check back against the standard.
But there was a very, very clear that there were two groups of thought in that, and the one that you designed to what you need first was in the minority, but he was very strong.
But you might notice that was a lot of Europeans. And remember I gave that paper to the tunnelling conference about 2016, and I was trying to test the difference between the different approaches, and it's really got to do with inquisitorial versus the adversarial legal system. The adversarial legal system hammers the point that it's not just enough to do what you think's a good idea. You're trying to test to see if you've overlooked anything at all times. And so far as I can tell, I thought that was the whole point of Western critical philosophy, but maybe I'm missing something here.
All right. Anything else? Last thoughts on safety culture change agents?
That's what we do. So if you want to stay the same, don't hire us. If you want to be different, we'll help.
We'll help facilitate the process. But,
and also, just make the record, we're not interested in doing it for you. We're interested in getting you to do it for yourself.
It has to be embedded in your organisation, that's
Correct.
right. And you have to be willing to make that change and notice that there is a change and a difference between the two.
Correct.
So we hope you found our podcast today interesting, and we hope you join us next time.